lots of things like that you'll encounter all the time. Other comments? Very good. Your questions are really good. So a few more prefixes. Dia, meaning through or complete. Neo, new. Mono, one. Di, two. So we have some others that also mean. What's another prefix that means two? Bi. What's another prefix that means one?
Uni.
Uni. Okay. Very good.
Probably meant now.
Unibrow. Okay. All right, so these are new suffixes, some we've already started using. So gen, meaning a substance or agent that produce or cause. So a pathogen would be what? Something that causes disease. Genic means producing, originating, causing. So pathogenic, an organism that's pathogenic that produces or causes disease. Genesis, here's our newly created, our new creation term. Globin refers to protein. So hemoglobin, protein containing protein. Iatric, iatrician, iatrix, iatrist, iatry, we usually use to we're referring to usually a physician. So like psychiatrist, a pediatrician, psychiatry. Usually it's referring to medical type of disciplines or a physician or something that goes along the line of related to healing, curing, treating, something along that line. Plasm is growth, substance, formation. So cytoplasm is the substance of a cell right outside the nucleus. Sarcoma can refer to a malignant growth. Cis is state of, so stasis. Phil, there's your love of or affinity for. Anemia is blood. Urea is urine. We're going to use those a lot, so commit those to memory and become friends with them. So if you see that on the end of a word, it means something in the blood or something in the urine. Glucose, urea. Glucose in the urine. Anemia would be what? Lack of blood, in the blood. Lack of, usually we're referring to iron or red blood cells.
Is there a word file? Is file the same as fill? Or is it separate?
So you're just pronouncing it different. Well,
You put an E on the end.
you put an E on the end. Different word.
It's a different word?
Yes. Okay, so creating medical terminology. You can work together if you would prefer, or by yourself. So single sugar, production with glucose. I took out, I eliminated, don't do the surgery to reduce obesity. I took that one out. Disease growth or development, painful urination, new growth, clot producing, cells that stain with eosin or blood and urine.
Why is a B12 shot red, but it's cyano, I can't say the word.
Cobalamin.
Yeah.
Sometimes dyes are added, you know, it may be, you can get it where it's clear, but you're right, the usual one is, I don't know, I'd have to look, I'd have to think, let me think through that and see. So the reds can sometimes be added as a pharmaceutical dye to distinguish it. So sometimes it's the reaction of the drugs you're putting together or an additive that's in there that's inert. So it doesn't necessarily telling you that the active ingredient is red. Does that help? Interesting. you a group that's on that molecule, though, I think that's
Simple?
That sounds right. You know, I'm just like, mine was only two, but
I did uralgia.
oh, see, mine was like actually
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, but that's different with the
that's what I was thinking. What is
I mean, dysuria could be. Dysuria means
that sounds
we're pushing it through, but you have trouble producing it to make it out. I said uralgia, but it's probably wrong. Well, just, yeah. What did you, I got monosaccharide. See, I know gluconeogenesis is a thing, because that's a lot of chemistry.
Yeah, I don't.
But I'm not going to put it here because
I said that one.
yeah, that'll work. Lipotomy?
She said not to do that. So I
Oh, okay, okay.
I don't know.
And then for it's not trophoma. I never heard that before.
Disease usually valid.
Yeah.
Where there's like
Hey, yep.
you can also put dis in front of it. But I had a look at it, like on you know, and then your name when I was for
Trophogenesis, new growth, neogenesis.
what is true?
So I put.
It means growth. Thrombogenesis. I think genesis is the actual process, genic describes the process. So both are correct. Eosinophil. Genesis? Or genic, yeah.
Genesis is the process. I put thrombogenesis, but I don't know if it's genic. I was thinking new.
I mean,
What is blood? It's hemorrhagic.
Everybody done? Okay, so Kristen asked why cyanocobalamin, which is a synthetic form of B12, why is it red when it contains the term cyano? So here's your explanation. Cyanocobalamin is a dark red crystal. That's what gives it its color. So the cyan is actually it's a C triple bond with a nitrogen group. So it's a chemical group. So then it's got a cobalt in it, and then it's an amine, so a nitrogen containing group. So it's a chemical name that doesn't have anything to do with blue. So great question though. All right, let's go through these. So the first one, single sugar, so monosaccharide. Anybody get anything different? Production of new glucose, okay? So
It is
how do we do this one?
gluconeogenesis.
You are right.
Okay, but why didn't I use Neo on this one? I thought it was but I was like, oh, but that's redundant because of the genesis.
I agree.
So how do you know when you were confused?
So production of new glucose, so sometimes it is what it is, that's exactly right. So gluconeogenesis, newly created.
Yeah,
So
I
if
think
it was just production of glucose, it'd just be glucogenesis, but if it's
Right.
production of a new type,
Yeah.
is the neo.
We'll
'Cause you
talk
can-
about this in diabetes a
you
lot.
can get sugar from building it or by breaking down other complex sugars. Yeah.
It is confusing, but it's at least, okay, so
Pentose
what you're
pathway.
learning is that you can create a term, you can take a term that you know, so now if you come across the term gluconeogenesis, you can interpret it, correct? Okay, so on a test, I can't test ambiguity, I can test knowledge of differences, so I'm going to, stay pretty much with the definitions that I have given you, okay? And I'll look at how you interpreted things. So I'm not going to be extremely hard on you, but welcome to medicine. Medicine is great. There are no longer black and whites. If you're looking for black and whites, you need to go into engineering or mathematics, where 2 + 2 is always 2. But in, sorry. So in this room, it's something different. So, but in the human body, everything is mostly gray. There are very few things that always adhere. It just doesn't. So you have to start getting comfortable with ambiguity. Okay? Yeah?
So do you partial credit on your exams?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Could you put like or? You know the words obviously, but the one before was production on new fats. This is the production of new glucose. This is Leo. The new fats did not have Leo.
They don't. They don't. We just don't use the word that way.
Right.
Sorry. Sorry. Get used to it. So I'm telling you, here's a difference.
Okay.
So there is, I'm trying to.
Oh, that was a
Let me think on it, because it probably goes to under what circumstances, which is beyond what we are looking at here. And it will usually pertain mostly in diabetes, because we will be producing and creating new glucose in a situation where we don't need it. So let me think on those and come back to kind of help you distinguish when you would use it and when you would not. So in gluconeogenesis, that's the word. So tell me your concerns now. I am very fair. I am telling you up front, the types of questions I'm going to ask you. Do you know these different words and what they mean? Can you take a term and interpret it? Can you build a new term? So if I've given you vocabulary, you should be able to do those words, okay? And in the context that we have done it. I'm not here to burn you. I'm not here to go, oh, I should have known that. I mean, why would you? So I will be fair, but at the same time, you will have to accept that things don't always follow the rules. I'm sorry, and sometimes I can't on my feet tell you why. I'm so ingrained in it that I don't even question it anymore, but you all always, new learners always make you go back and remember roots. So I will go back and try to look at why would it be that way. Yes?
If there was a term we hadn't gone over, like obviously we should know this now, if we had put glucogenesis on the exam and hadn't learned it, would you give us credit for it and then explain to us?
I would probably give you partial
Okay.
in this situation. Okay. Largely to reduce, I told you to skip that one. Disease, growth, or development. Dysplasia. Did anybody do something different? What'd you do?
That's what I put too.
Pathogenic doesn't mean growth or development.
It's quite confusing with the wording. You didn't know if, the root was growth or disease.
Have I given you a word root that means growth or development?
Sure.
Growth. Okay, growth. So did anybody use that term?
I tried.
Not a word. Okay. So dis will often be used as dysfunctional, abnormal, not right, incorrect. Think about dysfunctional families, we use that term. So dysphagia, difficult swallowing. So dys usually will refer to something abnormal, so disease would fall into that. Dystrophic, if you put dystrophic, that would probably work. Not a word we use very often, but it would work.
What about path or patho?
And how were you linking it to that? Talk to me about what you were
Like pathotroph?
Not a word. I see what you're going, but it's not a word.
It was a long shot.
Ryan, did you have?
No.
Okay. Hey.
Troph and path are both suffixes, right? So is that why they don't work?
Say it again. I couldn't hear everything you said.
Suffixes.
Still can't hear it.
It's okay, don't worry, it's fine.
Just project to me.
It's okay,
Old ears, can't always hear low voices.
it's not important, but are troph and path both suffixes?
Trophoblast can be it's a
Both.
word root,
Okay.
Pathology,
usually.
psychopath.
Path is usually a word root. Pathy is a suffix. You did what? Pathoplasm, interesting. Not a word. Very good, very good. But you're trying, you are applying, you're applying. Any other? Okay, painful urination. Anybody
No, it
come up
is
with something besides dysuria?
I got uralgia, but it's probably wrong.
Not usually used.
So this could be painful or disease?
Yep, DIS is used a lot of those. It usually is telling you it's not a normal situation, not a normal, this is a very common term.
Different from DIS?
Don't use dysuria that way.
Well, I mean, the prefix on our paper is DYS, says it's to be free of. So does it mean that too? They're two different.
We're,
On the first packet you gave us,
okay, I'll look at it.
are they different?
Yeah.
It's like dissociation versus dysuria.
Dis-ease, free of ease. We don't do DYS. We don't do difficult ease, painful ease. We don't use it that way. Okay. I'll go back and look at those and send out an explanation. Anybody else come up with a different term?
Uralgia?
Yeah, just not, you're thinking right, but not usually used that way. Because that would be painful urine.
Oh, yeah. Urine can't feel pain.
I see.
Okay, new growth,
Trophogenesis?
neo what?
Neoplasm.
Neoplasia.
Neogenesis, new.
Oh, you're right. Oh, I put neoplasm, so neoplasm.
Neoplasm would be a new growth,
So
okay.
that one would work.
Yeah, neoplasm.
Neoplasm would work?
But neotroph would not.
Usually not used that way.
Yeah,
Okay.
neutral.
New structures, no, not usually.
I think
Your process though, it's good in that you are applying. Now you're learning which are appropriate and which are not. Okay, clot producing.
Thrombogenesis?
Thrombogenic or thrombogenesis would be a new
I did
clot.
not even write this all that correction.
What else? I will definitely make you some Quizlets so you can practice this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cells that stay with eosin, so eosinophils.
Acid.
Oh, man. That's eosinophile.
Anybody get it differently?
Yeah.
Blood in urine. Pardon?
Eosinocyte.
Did it ask you for a cell?
Cell that stains.
Oh, well, okay. So the cell, we don't use eosin site. We just, it's not a term. It'd be not, it's more you've done that. You've been very literal. So the term is eosinophil. In your table, I give you one of those.
Okay,
Give you that as an example.
yeah.
I see where you're saying we don't use it that way. Blood in urine, everybody get this one?
Oh.
Hematuria,
Yeah.
very common word.
So no sanguinuria.
Oh, you could, but
It does
we
not
usually
use-
just don't use it. This is the more common. Okay, here's some complementary terms. Afebrile without fever. Febrile, we use that commonly instead of fever. We don't say that, we usually don't say, you would not say, the parent may say to you, my child's feverish. You would talk to each other and use the term febrile. Child is febrile, patient's febrile. They're afebrile. So afebrile doesn't mean without, it doesn't mean without fever. Usually it infers also normal temperature. Benign, not malignant. It's not going to usually come back. It's favorable for recovery. So those are inferred when you talk about benign. Exacerbation is something that a disease that increases in severity over a baseline. Idiopathic, use this all the time. If we don't know the cause, then we say it's idiopathic. Inflammation, response to injury, destruction, characterized by redness, swelling, heat, pain. Malignant, something that tends to become worse. It doesn't mean cancerous, even though we usually use it that way, but you could have malignant hyperthermia. What would that be?
It's gonna get worse.
Malignant hyper being what? Elevated in
Body temperature.
Okay, so you can get very high escalating temperatures that will kill you if there's no intervention. So that would be a malignant hyperthermia. There's some drugs that cause that.
Should we take pharmaceuticals at all now?
Oh, you'll wonder by the time we get done. Healthy respect for drugs. If you come out at the end, a healthy respect for drugs, I'll be very happy. Morbidity, state of being diseased. But sometimes we'll talk about it in reference to like a population. The morbidity of this disease. Mortality, state of being mortal, death. We also will talk about mortality rates. So it'll be used in both those contexts. Remission means you either move from disease active to inactive or absence of disease. So we look for remissions, the disease goes away, whether it does or not. If there's no evidence of it in the patient is the term. Lesion, so something usually on the skin can be in another part of the body. Injured, disease, not normal. A not normal part of an organ or body or skin. Prognosis is a forecast of probable outcome. So you know this term. So we'll say what's the patient's prognosis? What's the most likely outcome that we can expect or chance of recovery? And the last one is, what is that?
Diagnosis.
Oh, how come y'all can see that?
Diagnosis.
We're looking at our papers.
Oh, thank you. So the process of determining the nature and circumstance of a disease condition. So a lot of what you will be working on this year and learning to do. Questions about those? These are probably ones you're more familiar with. Okay, let's look at lab terms.
Yay.
Not many of them have word roots or combining forms. Some of it's starting to be familiar is that this lab is referring to this organ or this state or this element, this electrolyte. So glucose does have a word root. People use them differently, glyco or gluco. Sometimes they're very word specific. Glycogenesis you'll see with Y or a U sometimes. Calcium is a mineral that we can measure in the blood. Sodium, potassium, chloride, and sodium, potassium, CO2 combining power, chloride. These are more electrolytes. So sodium you will see used as NaTr. So natremia would be what? Natremia. Emia, blood. So sodium in the blood. Hypernatremia would mean what?
Too much sodium in the blood.
Too high, sodium too high. Calcemia would be the amount of calcium in the blood. Hypocalcemia would be what?
Not enough calcium.
Low calcium in the blood. Potassium, cal. Know these because you will run into them all the time. So hypercalcemia is what?
Too much potassium.
Too much potassium or high, elevated potassium in the blood. So appreciate the difference between calcium and potassium. They sound like different when you say them, but when you're talking about calc and cal, you have to pay just your ear to your ear gets.
Could you repeat that?
So hypercalcemia, that's talking about calcium. Hyperkalemia is talking about potassium. So appreciate the auditory difference between cal and calc. CO2 will show up on your general chemistries. It is an indirect reference tells you about the acid-base status of the blood. So it's an indirect measure of bicarbonate. It's a CO2 combining power of the blood. So it's it's going to tell you about acid-base bufferings, the status. Chloride is an electrolyte, anion. An anion is what? Cations and anions. So anions are negatively charged, cations are. Which are the cations up there?
Sodium, potassium,
and
calcium.
Good.
I don't know, I'm gonna look at my periodic table in my head.
You'll get it.
It's on the left.
Creatinine is a waste product of the muscle. Be sure that you differentiate between creatine and creatinine. They're different. So creatinine produced by muscle used to help determine GFR, or the ability of the kidneys to clear a volume of blood in a period. Okay, so we'll talk about serum creatinine clearance. Yes.
Is this something that you would test for like heart attacks?
No, not that one.
That's the other one.
Creatinine is always talking about
Kidney.
kidney.
So if it's elevated, I feel like in medicine, one of the first things they check is the creatinine level. It's just the function of the kidney.
It gives us, it's an indirect measure of filtering capacity, yes. BUN is not bun, please do not say that, it's BUN. So when you say it to your colleagues, use BUN, blood, urea, nitrogen.
Good, can I have the button?
Yeah, don't do that. I always know it's a novice when I'm just albumin is a protein, major protein produced by the liver, major circulating protein, very important when we talk about drugs because drugs love to bind to it, albumin. Total protein in the blood, it's another blood, it includes albumin, but it has other proteins also. So we can order a total protein. Bilirubin, it's another liver test. ALT and AST are often referred to as a liver function test. People will use a generic, they're usually talking about ALT and AST. The old terms would be SGOT and SGPT, you may have learned them that way, same thing. So these are serum transferases, they refer to liver function. If you're not familiar with those, keep looking them over so you just get into the jargon of them and know what it's, just right now all you need to know is what major organ of our body is it referring to. Okay. Questions about those? Questions? Here are more of your blood related, so neutrophil, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils. So when we get a white blood cell count, we're looking at all of them. Then we ask for a differential. We break them down into the different parts. In different diseases, different ones of these will be elevated or depressed. Okay? Neutrophils are your major common, 70 to 80% of all the white blood cells you produce are usually neutrophils. What's that word tell you? What's neutrophil tell you? Pretty neutral when it comes to stains. It won't take either one up. Doesn't have an affinity for them. So it's going to look different under the microscope.
White.
Okay. Lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophil, basophils, recognize those as white blood cells. So when you learn about white blood cell counts, you'll already start to be familiar. Blasts are usually, if you see that at the end of a word, erythroblast, are usually, well, that's an immature red cell, but it's referring to an earlier or progenitor cell, so an earlier cell, not the mature or complete or end product cell. So blasts are usually immature cells. Hemoglobin, hematocrit, so when we're talking about blood, we're talking about hemoglobin, amount of heme that's carried by the red blood cells. Hematocrit is a volume term, how much red blood cells do we have in a volume of blood? Reticulocytes are young red blood cells. So don't get upset here, they didn't use it, they came up with a new term. So reticulocytes, when you are having to make a lot of new red blood cells, what we usually see under the microscope are reticulocytes. So you'll hear people saying they're reticking. We dumb everything down to the least amount of thing we have to say. So reticulocytes, new red blood cells, doesn't follow the rules. Platelets or thrombocytes, either one of those are correct. They're the platelets. Questions about those? Yes.
So these were all measured in blood. Are the ones from the last slide all measured in urine?
No, they can be, no. They're, all the ones before are measured in blood. Some of them are measured in urine. We can look at these, we can see these show up in urine. It's usually not a good sign. But yes. So I wasn't referring to whether they're blood or urine. I was giving you examples. More I want you just to understand just the terminology. Where is it coming from or what is it? Okay. Again, you will hit these in lab medicine. You have a concentration called lab medicine, right? You all talked about your concentrations? Yes. Yes. So you have a concentration that runs throughout all the modules that is particular to lab medicine. And so you'll have information during those modules about tests, lab tests, other things that you do to diagnose disease. And when we're talking about, especially in Clin Med, they'll talk about, here's what I need to order. In Pharma, I'll talk about it, is that here's what we need to monitor, because you've started this drug, it's going to have an effect, what do we need to then look for? Either because we want to see if the drug's effective or it's caused a side effect. I just want you to hear the words if you're not familiar with them and start to get, include them into your vocabulary. Okay, building lab terms, this should be fun. You all are stressing me. Okay, so look at these terms. You're actually doing well. So either work together or separately to create those terms.
Hyper. Okay. Oh, yeah. Glycemia.
So, did I give you hyper and hypo in the last
Yes, you did.
Hypocalcemia. Hyponatremia. Calcemia. Potassium hyper.
At the down floor. Which one are you? I know.
I don't know what the word root is for acronyms.
For what?
Bilirubin. Hyper.
What'd you put?
Molly. Thank you. Euglycemia, that's all I could find.
Okay. Looking at this.
You was the only normal one I saw.
Yeah, there was no one that I knew of.
Oh, you did?
So I sent all the pictures, it said what we wanted.
So it's like
Wait, like so?
Is there supposed to be a connector between
When we sent down
calcium
here, but we
and
really did like a little bit of food. I never did. Maybe like
I love the space just in case.
Everybody done?
I think he said
I don't know if that's right, but I know it's the word before.
like that lady's kid.
Hey, that sounds better to me actually.
And we don't look listening, but we get
Sorry, what does pedia mean?
small decreased or not enough.
I actually like that.
Chlorine just decreased or not enough.
Almost pedia.
I think we're making up some words.
It should be easier. Everybody done? I'm gonna go ahead and record because we got about 4 minutes left. Okay, so elevated blood glucose, so hyper, glycemia. Everybody got it? Yes. Good. Abnormally low sodium in the blood, so low,
Hyponatremia.
Nat, sodium, emia, hyponatremia, yes.
So whether it's just below normal or abnormal, it's all hypo? There's not,
Hypo usually is telling you it's below a normal range,
okay.
okay? Because it can be, some people may say low normal,
Okay.
because they're concerned. Something's going on with them that a low normal is worrisome, a reason to go with a cluster of symptoms, or they're worried about progression to hypo. Hypo's telling you it's below a range.
Oh.
Calcium in the urine,
Calciuria.
calciuria.
Yep.
Sorry, they put two vowels together, they violated the rule. Next one, elevated blood potassium, so hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia. Low platelet count. Thrombocytopenia. Other, what else?
I got hypo.
Hypo what?
Thrombocytopenia.
That's what I didn't see.
Usually for cell lines, like thrombocytopenia, neutropenia, we're going to use the term penia when we're talking about cell lines. Okay.
Cell body, you say cell bodies? What'd you say?
Cells.
Cells?
red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, we're gonna use anemia. Blood chloride below normal, hypochloremia. So it's not green blood below normal, okay? So no Vulcans. Although some people do. Okay. Normal blood glucose. So EU is the prefix denoting normal. Euthyroid, euglycemic, normal. So hyper, hypo. Albumin in the urine.
Albuminuria.
Albuminuria. You can see that when things are where they should not be, they don't tend to give you a prefix that tells you if something's wrong. Okay. Elevated bilirubin in the blood. So Zach, I really would like to hear what you came up with.
Oh, I just said hyperbilirubin. I didn't put the emia. I should.
Okay, so hyperbilirubin, all that tells you it's elevated. So it usually is going to be in the blood, but you need to, what source did you find it in? Okay, all right, I'll pick up here tomorrow. I had some other exercise we didn't get to, so I'll probably just wait and post this, unless you're really wanting it today. I'll post it tomorrow after we get through those exercises. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow at 10.
Thank you. Albumin. Yeah, albumin.
Yeah.